Back in 2016, Nintendo and Universal announced their plans to bring Mario to the world of theme parks. Super Nintendo World would be a brand new land opening at multiple Universals, I guess, across the globe. But despite how much of a slam dunk idea that sounds now, it was actually met with a lot of skepticism when it was first announced. People questioned how well a game would translate into real life, as you would lose that interactivity and control you feel with a controller in your hand. But fast forward 5 years later, and Super Nintendo World opened at Universal Studios Japan to rave reviews. The land looks amazing, with colorful theming, cool food, interactive elements, and an e-ticket Mario Kart ride to headline it all. It's been so amazing that they opened a second in California and are currently building a third at their new park Epic Universe in Orlando. They're also building a Donkey Kong expansion in Japan that'll open with the park in Orlando. So obviously the skeptics were wrong, right? The land has been a massive hit and has translated really well from the game into real life. Right? Well, I don't think that's 100% true. These video game inspired lands have a fundamental issue that'll rear its ugly head the more of them that we get. But before we get to that, I want to talk about what we will actually end up getting. Just like Harry Potter Land being the first real IP land where you go into the movie, Super Nintendo World is the first to let you go into the game. And if this is anything like Harry Potter World, then this concept is going to be milked. So today in this video, I want to explore that idea. I want to speculate, predict, and theorize about the future of video game lands and how they could find their way into theme parks. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of video games out there, so there is no shortage to choose from. The video game industry is absolutely massive, being the biggest entertainment subcategory by a pretty big margin, even bigger than like movies and music. So where do we start? Well, let's start with what's already been done. If Universal is building any more of these lands, then it'll probably be Nintendo properties. I bet you they have a deal with Nintendo that doesn't allow them to put any other video game franchises in their parks, but even if they didn't, why wouldn't they just go with Nintendo again? Now, the two franchises that keep getting thrown around are Zelda and Pokemon. Nintendo has some other big series like Kirby, Splatoon, Animal Crossing, but none of these are really big enough to carry their own land, and really neither is Zelda. Zelda is big in the gaming world, but is still nowhere near the cultural phenomenon of Mario or Pokemon. Plus, it doesn't really have any super recognizable features. Like, there's a Triforce and the Master Sword, but other than that, it looks pretty similar to most other fantasy games. Even Link himself doesn't really have a lot of super memorable traits. I mean, look at Mario. The reason it works so well in the land is because there's so many icons of gaming packed into that franchise. Bowser is arguably the most well-known boss of all time, Goombas are the most well-known enemy, Luigi is definitely the biggest player too in gaming, and there's so many other things like warp pipes and piranha plants that everyone just kind of recognizes. Zelda doesn't really have those things. It's just not as iconic of a franchise, so I don't really think it would work even if it would fit really well into the Lost Continent. What would work would be a Pokemon land. Pokemon is absolutely massive. There's the TV shows with over 1,000 episodes to its name. There's Pokemon Go, which took over everyone's phone for years after it dropped, and there's the mainline Pokemon games, which are always some of the best sellers of their consoles. It really is a behemoth of a franchise, and it makes sense to be the follow-up after Mario in the Nintendo umbrella. Now, what exactly the land would look like, I don't really know. There's no real home base that you start out in every Pokemon game like the Mushroom Kingdom. They would probably just have to go for a random town that you go to, and that's like doable, but the towns in Pokemon are for the most part just like regular looking towns. The only difference is the store, the rest center, and the gyms. Now, the store is just going to be a store because that's where they'll sell all their Pokemon plushies and their Pokeballs and all that good stuff. The gym could be a cool ride where you could battle the gym leader and you're in the middle of like a Pokemon fight. Maybe there's animatronics, or maybe it's a simulator type ride. I'm not 100% sure. I just think there's potential for a very cool Pokemon battle ride. Now, the rest center, I'm also not 100% sure what you could do. I guess you could do a restaurant or something, but you kind of have to work that out somehow. I don't really know how they would do that. One thing I do think people overlook though with Pokemon is the interactivity of the franchise. In Super Nintendo World with the Mushroom Kingdom, you have these bands that allow you to interact with elements and collect coins. I think they could do a really cool system like that in the Pokemon land. Just instead of collecting coins, you're catching Pokemon. Pokemon Go is a huge hit because you could catch augmented Pokemon in real life settings. This could build off of that principle with sections of the land like strictly for catching Pokemon, like just like grass fields where you could go and catch Pokemon. Or you could catch them in line for a ride or while eating at a restaurant. I'm not an Imagineer, but I feel like something along that principle could work really well. If Universal actually does do a Pokemon land though, I think it'll go to Universal Studios Singapore and Studios Park in Florida. Singapore because they desperately need more rides, in Florida because Islands has been getting a lot of love and so will Epic Universe, and they've both kind of just left this park in the dust. But beyond Nintendo, there are a lot of other games that could take theme park shape hypothetically. Minecraft, Sonic, Halo, these are all huge franchises with more than recognizable features that could all make for lands. But here's the thing, I don't really know who's going to be making these lands. Like I said before, I'm sure Universal has some sort of agreement to at least limit the amount of other video games they can put in their parks. Maybe they can put close collaborators like Sonic that appear alongside Nintendo characters, but I doubt they'll be able to put direct competitors like like Halo, like one land over from Donkey Kong's country. So that really only leaves one other option with Disney, because like Six Flags is not doing this. I'm sorry, they're just not. And if I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Disney will put any video games in their parks. Disney has a very clean and family-friendly image, and it's why a lot of people will pick them over Universal if they're going as a family. A lot of these video game franchises would just not fit into the Disney brand. Call of Duty, Halo, GTA, I'm not saying Universal would necessarily build any of these, but especially not Disney. The only franchise that's big enough and clean enough for them is Sonic, but Sonic has always been second fiddle to Mario, to the point where they just kind of merged and he seems like the smaller character in the Mario universe. Disney's not going to want to build the lesser character of the two, like that's just not how they roll. Even Mario Land, I'm not 100% sure they would want to build. They've never really done an entire world around an IP that they don't own. Like yeah, they sprinkle in rides like Tower of Terror with the Twilight Zone, but for the most part they stick to their franchises, the stuff under the Disney umbrella. And that makes sense. It's good marketing for their movies, it keeps continuity in their parks, and they have full creative control over what they can do. But there is one way I could conceivably see Disney doing some sort of video game land, and it's kind of cheating. That way is through Wreck-It Ralph. If they made a Wreck-It Ralph land that was like the outlet hub that connected all of the arcade games, I could easily see them making a Space Invaders, a Sugar Crush, a Pac-Man, and a bunch of other different rides or restaurants or like just other attractions. And technically that fits under the Disney umbrella because all of these characters did show up in the movie. Even Bowser, which I don't know how that works with like the Universal Land and the Illuminations movies, so I don't know, maybe just avoid him. I could easily see a Wreck-It Ralph land opening at Hollywood Studios or Epcot or California's Adventure or even the Studios Park in Paris. It just seems like a really unique way to fire back at Universal without like directly competing. It's like thinking outside the box. Okay, maybe I'm giving myself a little too much credit on this one, but like, you know what I mean. Now, as for Universal, I think they'll probably add more Nintendo IPs to their park, but as smaller scale limited attractions. I'm 100% sure they'll do something at Halloween Horror Nights themed to a Nintendo IP. They could do Metroid, they can do Luigi's Mansion, or they could even do Bayonetta. Probably Luigi's Mansion because they already have the Mario thing going, but Metroid would also be really cool. Also, parades, fireworks, all those like limited special event attractions are gonna have Nintendo characters sprinkled throughout. I'm already picturing item block fireworks and Goombas and parades. And honestly, I'm not mad about that. As cool as the idea of video games and theme parks are, I really don't think they translate that well. Video games are meant to give control to the player, but are usually designed linearly, and neither of those things would really convert into a theme park that well. You lose that aspect of control in rides and that linear structure when you're walking around the land. These lands would really have to rely on super recognizable landmarks and characters, which only a few of them have. Because out of all of the big forms of entertainment, video games is really the only platform that gives smaller indie developers a big role in the spotlight sometimes. There are massive games that haven't spawned massive franchises outside of their game, like Hollow Knight, Undertale, Stardew Valley, and Cuphead. These are all super popular, but are pretty contained to their games that they originated from, and with the exception of Undertale, didn't really become cultural phenomenons. In any other industry, that level of success from any of these games would spawn sequels and spin-offs and TV shows and like soundtracks and deals with streaming services, but for video games, none of that really exists. People are allowed to just play a game and enjoy it, but then just put it down, so these grand, iconic theme park supporting games aren't really super easy to come by. And that's okay. I don't really need video games to be the next big wave of theme park lands like movies were. I'd honestly be fine with it just being contained to only Nintendo at the Universal parks. I'd rather see some innovative and creative lands that don't hinge on pre-existing franchises. Something fresh, based on an idea like Adventureland or the Future Showcase. As cool as these video games land look on TikTok, or as cool as it will be to step into the Mushroom Kingdom, I'm sure, I don't think that it should be the future of theme park lands. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you made it this far in this video, comment Star Fox. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.